The repair station on 7B floated in the darkness of space like a forgotten outpost at the edge of civilization. It was not a glamorous place. The walls were stained with engine grease, and the air recyclers hummed with a tired wheeze that never quite went away. Ships came here when they had nowhere else to go. Cargo freighters with failing engines. Mining vessels held together by prayers and welding tape. The occasional passenger liner that had drifted too far off course. They all ended up at 7B eventually. Danny Cole had worked at the station for 6 years. He was 34 years old with calloused hands and permanent grease stains under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could remove. He had grown up on a farm in Nebraska before the stars called him away from Earth. His father had taught him how to fix tractors and combine harvesters before Danny ever dreamed of touching a starship engine. Those skills translated surprisingly well to spacecraft repair. An engine was an engine whether it ran on diesel or plasma. You just had to understand what it needed and give it exactly that. The night shift was always quiet. Danny liked it that way. He could work in peace without the other mechanics chattering in his ear or the station manager breathing down his neck about repair times. He was elbow deep in a freighter's cooling system when the emergency klaxon began to wail. Danny pulled himself out of the engine compartment and wiped his hands on his coveralls. Emergency arrivals were not uncommon at 7B. Ships in trouble knew they could limp to the station and find help, but something about the way the klaxon sounded made Danny's stomach tighten. It was the long, sustained tone that meant something big was coming in hot. He made his way to the observation deck just as the ship emerged from the darkness. Danny stopped walking. He stopped breathing. He had seen thousands of ships in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. The vessel was enormous. It stretched nearly 300 meters from bow to stern, and its hull was covered in what looked like black scales that seemed to drink in the light around them. 4 massive wings extended from its sides, though one of them had been nearly torn away. Plasma burns covered the ship's surface like terrible wounds, and entire sections of the hull had been ripped open to expose the skeleton beneath. The ship was dying. Anyone could see that. It moved with the slow, desperate momentum of a creature, using its last strength to reach safety. Danny watched as the ship settled onto the largest landing pad with a groan of tortured metal. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines and sparks showered from damaged power conduits. For a long moment, nothing else happened. Then the cockpit began to open. Danny had heard stories about everyone in the galaxy had heard stories. They were dragon warriors from a civilization called the Ascendancy that had conquered 17 star systems before humanity even figured out how to leave Earth. They stood 12 feet tall on average with scales that came in every color from midnight blue to burning gold. They had wings and claws and teeth that could tear through hull plating. They breathed fire when they were angry, and they were angry most of the time. First contact between humans and had happened about 60 years ago. It had not gone well. The dragons viewed humans as small and weak and barely worth acknowledging. Humans viewed the dragons as terrifying monsters who might decide to conquer Earth if they ever got bored. No treaties existed between the two species. No alliances. No trade agreements. Just an uneasy acknowledgement that they both occupied the same corner of the galaxy and neither wanted to start a war. The creature that stumbled down the ramp of the dying ship was everything the stories had promised and more. She stood over 12 feet tall with scales the color of a midnight sky that shimmered with an inner fire when the light caught them just right. Her wings were leathery and torn, and they folded against her back as she moved. Her eyes were vertical slits of molten amber that seemed to glow with their own light. She was beautiful in the way that a thunderstorm is beautiful, magnificent and terrifying all at once. She was also clearly dying. Golden blood poured from wounds across her body. One of her arms hung limp at her side, and her steps were unsteady as she made her way down the ramp. She collapsed before she reached the bottom and landed hard on the deck plating with a sound that shook the walls. Danny watched as the other mechanics on duty turned and ran. He could not blame them. A wounded was still more dangerous than anything else in this sector of space. Her claws alone could gut a human with a single swipe. Her fire breath could melt through reinforced steel. Every survival instinct in the human brain screamed to get away from a predator like this. But Danny had grown up on that farm in Nebraska. His father had taught him a lot of things, but the most important lesson was simple. You do not leave a creature to suffer. It did not matter if it was a horse with a broken leg, or a stray dog caught in a fence, or a 12-foot dragon warrior bleeding out on your landing pad. You helped because helping was the right thing to do. Danny started walking toward her. His boots rang against the deck plating, and the sound seemed impossibly loud in the silence that had fallen over the station. The dragon's eyes tracked his movement. A warning growl rumbled in her chest, and her good hand curled into a fist. She was trying to push herself up, but her body would not cooperate. Danny stopped a few feet away and held up his empty hands. He kept his voice low and calm, the way he used to talk to spooked horses back home. "Easy now, I am not going to hurt you. I am just a mechanic, I fix things." The dragon stared at him. Her amber eyes were filled with pain and something else. Something that might have been confusion. She clearly had not expected a human to approach her. She had probably expected them all to run or to attack while she was weak. The idea that one might simply offer help did not seem to compute. "Your ship is in bad shape," Danny continued. "I can fix it, but first we need to get you somewhere safe. Can you walk if I help you?" The dragon's growl faded. She studied him for a long moment with those burning eyes. Danny held his ground. He had faced down angry bulls and territorial dogs, and one memorable incident with a mama bear who had wandered onto the farm. A dragon was just another creature in pain, and creatures in pain needed kindness, not fear. Finally she spoke. Her voice was like gravel and thunder mixed together. It vibrated in Danny's chest and made his teeth ache. "You are either very brave or very foolish, small human." Danny shrugged. "Probably both. Now let me help you up." He reached out his hand. The dragon looked at it for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly and with obvious effort she reached out her own massive hand and let Danny Cole help her to her feet. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single moment of contact would change the course of galactic history forever. The repair bay was the largest space on the station, and it still felt cramped with a 12-foot dragon warrior lying on the floor. Danny had managed to guide her there with a combination of gentle encouragement and sheer stubbornness. She had leaned on him during the walk, and her weight had nearly driven him to his knees more than once. But they had made it. That was what mattered. Her name was, she told him that much before she lost consciousness, Third Claw of the Obsidian Fleet. Danny had no idea what that meant, but it sounded important. He figured he could ask questions later. Right now he had work to do. The station's medical bay was designed for humans. It had bandages and painkillers and surgical tools that would be useless on a creature with scales instead of skin. Danny stood in the doorway for a full minute trying to figure out what to do. Then he remembered the ship. Vessel was dying, but it was not dead yet. Danny made his way through the shattered corridors with a flashlight in one hand and a toolkit in the other. The interior was strange and beautiful even in its ruined state. The walls curved like the inside of a living creature, and the controls were designed for hands much larger than his own. He found the medical bay near the center of the ship. The equipment was damaged but not destroyed. Pictographic instructions glowed on the walls showing how to use each device. Danny gathered everything he could carry and hurried back to the repair bay. The next 48 hours blurred together into a haze of work and worry and desperate improvisation. Danny was not a doctor. He had never treated anything more complicated than a cut finger on himself or a sick cow back on the farm. But he had always been good at following instructions, and the pictographs on the dragon medical devices were surprisingly clear. He cleaned her wounds with solutions that smelled like copper and lightning. He sealed the deeper gashes with a device that seemed to work like a combination of glue and laser. He set her broken arm using splints meant for creatures 3 times his size, and secured them with straps that he had to modify on the fly because they were designed for dragon proportions. He monitored her vital signs on screens that displayed information in a language he could not read, but the colors seemed intuitive. Green was good, red was bad. He kept everything in the green. When he was not treating her wounds, he was working on her ship. The life support systems were failing, and if he could not get them running again, then all his medical work would be for nothing. Danny crawled through maintenance shafts that were barely large enough for him to squeeze through. He rerouted power from damaged systems to critical ones. He sealed hull breaches with welding torches meant for cargo containers and prayers that the patches would hold. He jury-rigged solutions that would have made his old engineering instructors weep with horror, but they worked. That was all that mattered. Drifted in and out of consciousness during those 2 days. Sometimes she would wake and find Danny working on some piece of equipment nearby. She would watch him with those amber eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light of the repair bay. She never spoke during these moments. She just watched. Danny pretended not to notice, but he could feel her gaze on him like a physical weight. On the 3rd day, she finally spoke again. Danny was replacing a damaged power coupling in her ship's secondary engine when her voice rumbled through the repair bay. "Why?" Danny looked up from his work, had pushed herself into a sitting position against the wall. Her scales had lost some of their luster during her illness, but her eyes were clear and sharp. She looked stronger than she had the day before. The healed fast. Danny had noticed that. "Why what?" he asked. "Why help me? Your kind fears mine, hates mine. We have given you every reason to leave me to die, yet here you are." Danny set down his tools and thought about the question. It deserved a real answer. "My father used to say that you can tell the measure of a person by how they treat creatures that cannot fight back. I know you are a warrior. I know you could probably kill me without even trying when you are healthy. But when you landed here, you were not a warrior. You were just someone who needed help. That is all I saw." Was silent for a long moment. Her tail curled around her legs in a gesture that Danny could not interpret. He wondered if he had offended her. They were supposed to be proud. Maybe she did not like being reminded of her weakness. "You are strange," she said finally. "I have encountered many species in my years of service, conquered some, allied with others. None of them would have done what you did, not without expecting something in return." Danny shrugged. "I do not want anything from you. I just want to get your ship flying again so you can go home." Home, the word came out heavy and tired. There may not be a home to return to. Danny stopped working. He crossed the repair bay and sat down on a crate a respectful distance from. She did not seem to mind his presence. That felt like progress. "What happened to you out there?" Closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than before, almost vulnerable. "The collective, machine intelligences that consume organic civilizations. They have been spreading through the outer systems for decades. We thought we had contained them. We were wrong." She told him about the ambush. Her fleet had been 17 ships strong. They had responded to a distress signal from a colony world only to find the collective waiting for them. The machines had new weapons, new tactics, ships that could appear from nowhere and strike before anyone could react. The battle had lasted 6 hours. When it was over, was the only survivor. 17 ships, she repeated. 4,000 warriors, my brothers and sisters, gone in a single night. Danny did not know what to say. He could not imagine that kind of loss. So he just sat there with her in the silence of the repair bay and let her know that she was not alone. After a while, opened her eyes and looked at him. "What is your name, small human?" Danny Cole." "Danny Cole," she said it slowly as if testing the sounds. "I will remember that name." "I hope so. I have been working pretty hard to keep you alive. It would be a shame if you forgot me." The sound that came from his throat startled him. It took Danny a moment to realize that she was laughing. It was a deep, rumbling sound like distant thunder that shook the walls and rattled the tools on his workbench. He had not known that dragons could laugh. "You are funny, Danny Cole. I did not expect that." "Yeah, well, I am full of surprises." She laughed again, and this time Danny smiled along with her. Something had shifted between them. The wounded predator and the frightened prey were gone. In their place were two people from different worlds finding unexpected common ground. Danny picked up his tools and went back to work on her ship, but the silence between them was different now. It was comfortable, easy, like the silence between old friends who did not need words to understand each other. He wondered what his father would think if he could see him now, fixing a Dragon spaceship in an orbital repair station at the edge of known space. The old man probably would have laughed and told him to get back to work. So Danny did exactly that. 2 weeks passed on the station and grew stronger with each day. Her wounds closed with a speed that amazed Danny. Gashes that would have taken months to heal on a human sealed themselves in days. Her broken arm mended so quickly that Danny had to remove the splints early because they were becoming restrictive. They were built for war. Their bodies were designed to recover from injuries that would kill lesser creatures. Her ship was another matter. The damage was extensive, and Danny had to fabricate replacement parts from scratch using materials that were never meant to work together. He spent long hours in the machine shop cutting and welding and cursing when things did not fit the way he needed them to. Offered advice when she could, but much of her ship's technology was beyond her understanding. She was a warrior, not an engineer. She knew how to fly the vessel and how to fight with it, but the inner workings were a mystery to her, just as they were to Danny. They talked while he worked. It started with practical matters, would explain what a particular system was supposed to do, and Danny would figure out how to make it do that thing again. But gradually, their conversations drifted into other territories, personal territories that neither of them had expected to explore. Told him about the Ascendancy. It was an empire that spanned 17 star systems and had existed for over 10,000 years. There were its warriors and its rulers. They had evolved on a world of fire and stone where only the strongest survived. Their civilization was built on principles of honor and strength and duty. Every dragon served the Ascendancy from the moment they could fly until the moment they died. "We are hatched in clutches of 6, she explained one evening while Danny wrestled with a stubborn fuel injector. "We spend our first century learning to fight and to fly. Those who survive earn the right to join a fleet. Those who do not survive are remembered with honor." "A century," Danny repeated. "How old are you?" 347 years by your calendar." Danny nearly dropped his wrench. He had known that they lived longer than humans, but he had not realized the scale of the difference. Was older than the United States. She had been alive when humans were still fighting with muskets and sailing ships. "I am 34, he said. "I must seem like a child to you." Tilted her head in that way she did when she was considering something carefully. "No, you seem like a human. Your lives burn bright and fast. You accomplish in decades what we take centuries to achieve. It is strange but not inferior, just different." Danny told her about Earth, about Nebraska and the farm where he grew up, about summers that were so hot the corn would wilt in the fields and winters that were so cold the snow would pile higher than his head. He told her about his father who had worked that land for 40 years and died with dirt under his fingernails and a smile on his face. He told her about his mother who had passed when Danny was young and left behind only faded photographs and a lullaby he still hummed sometimes when he could not sleep. He told her about Lily. His daughter was 8 years old now. She lived on Mars with her mother and Danny's ex-wife. The marriage had not survived Danny's decision to take a job in deep space, but they had parted as friends. Lily sent him video messages every week. She had his eyes and her mother's smile, and Danny missed her with an ache that never quite went away. "You have offspring," said. It was not a question. "One, my little girl. She is the best thing I ever did. Why are you not with her? Danny sighed and set down his tools. This was the question he asked himself every night before he fell asleep. Her mother and I split up a few years back. It was not anybody's fault. We just wanted different things. Needed stability, a home, a routine. I needed to be out here, working with my hands, fixing things. I could not be what she needed and she could not be what I needed. So we made the hard choice. And your daughter? Lily understands, or at least she says she does. She is a smart kid, smarter than me. She knows I love her. I tell her every chance I get. And one day when she is older, I will find a way to be closer to her. But right now this is where I need to be. Was quiet for a long moment. Her tail swished slowly across the floor in a rhythm that Danny had learned to associate with deep thought. My clutch siblings are all dead now, she said finally. The collective killed 2 of them. The others fell in different battles over the centuries. I am the last of my clutch. When I die, our line ends. I am sorry. Do not be. It is the way of things. We are warriors. Death is our constant companion. But I confess that I did not expect to miss them as much as I do. We were not close in the way that humans are close. Do not form bonds the way your kind does. We are taught that attachment is weakness, that caring too much for others makes you vulnerable. She looked at Danny with those amber eyes that had grown familiar to him over the past 2 weeks. But watching you work to save me when you had no reason to do so, listening to you speak about your daughter with such tenderness, it makes me wonder if perhaps we were taught wrong. Danny did not know what to say to that. So he simply nodded and went back to his work and let the silence speak for him. 3 days later, the ship was ready. Danny had done everything he could. The vessel would never be what it was before the battle, but it was. It could fly. It could fight if it needed to. It could carry home. They stood together in the repair bay on the last evening. Ship hummed quietly behind them. Its wounds had been patched and its systems restored. It looked like a warrior who had survived a terrible battle and come out stronger on the other side. I have to go, said. My people need to know what happened. They need to prepare for the collective. I know. I do not want to leave. Danny looked up at her. She was 12 feet of scales and claws and teeth. She could destroy him with a thought. But standing there in the dim light of the repair bay, she looked almost vulnerable. Then come back, he said. When you are done with your war, come back and visit. I will probably still be here fixing ships and drinking bad coffee. Laughed that thunderous laugh of hers. Then she did something that Danny did not expect. She reached up and plucked a scale from her own hide. It came away with a soft sound and a tiny drop of golden blood. She pressed it into Danny's hand. The scale was warm. It pulsed with a faint light that seemed to come from within. This is part of me, said. Among my people we give such gifts only to those we trust with our lives. If you ever need me, hold this scale and speak my name. No matter where I am, no matter what I am doing, I will come to you. Danny looked at the scale in his hand. It was beautiful, deep blue with threads of gold running through it like veins of precious metal and stone. I do not know what to say. Say that you will keep it. Say that you will not forget me. I could never forget you. She smiled. Danny had not known that dragons could smile, but she did. Then she turned and walked up the ramp into her ship. The engines roared to life and the vessel lifted off the landing pad. Danny watched until it disappeared into the darkness between the stars. Then he put the scale on a chain around his neck and went back to work. There were always more ships to fix. That was the nature of his job. But nothing would ever feel quite the same as it had before a wounded dragon crashed into his life. 3 months passed after Left and life returned to normal on 7B. Danny fixed engines and patched hulls and argued with the station manager about supply orders. He sent video messages to Lily every week, and she sent messages back. She had started learning to play piano, and she played him songs that were clumsy and beautiful in the way that only a child's music can be. He saved every one of those recordings. They were his most treasured possessions. The other mechanics on the station treated Danny differently now. Word had spread about what he had done for the warrior. Some of them thought he was brave. Others thought he was insane. A few thought he was lying about the whole thing. Danny did not care what any of them thought. He knew what had happened, and that was enough. He wore scale on a chain around his neck. He never took it off. At first the other mechanics asked about it, and Danny would just shrug and change the subject. Eventually, they stopped asking. It became just another part of him, like the grease stains on his hands and the scar on his chin from a welding accident years ago. Sometimes late at night when the station was quiet, Danny would hold the scale and think about. He wondered where she was. He wondered if she was safe. He wondered if the war against the collective was going well or poorly. The news feeds did not say much about the ascendancy. They kept their affairs private, and human journalists did not have access to their space. For all Danny knew could be dead. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit. 3 months and 12 days after left, the collective came to 7B. Danny was asleep in his quarters when the first alarm sounded. He had heard emergency klaxons before, but this one was different. It was the high, rapid tone that meant hostile ships. The station was under attack. He threw on his coveralls and ran for the observation deck. The scene outside the viewport stopped him cold. Dozens of ships hung in the darkness around the station. They were unlike anything Danny had ever seen. Angular and black with no visible engines or weapons ports. They moved with a mechanical precision that was somehow more terrifying than any organic enemy. The collective, the machine intelligences that had warned him about. They had found them. The station shook as the first weapon's fire struck. Danny grabbed a support beam to keep his balance. Alarms screamed from every direction and emergency lights bathed everything in a hellish red glow. People were running and screaming. The station manager was shouting orders that nobody could hear over the chaos. Danny knew he should head for the escape pods. That was the protocol for an attack like this. Get to the pods and get away and hope that rescue ships would find you before your air ran out. But the pods were on the far side of the station, and the collective ships were targeting that section specifically. Even as Danny watched, he saw an explosion bloom in the distance. The escape bay. It was gone. He ran for the repair bay instead. It was the most heavily reinforced section of the station. If anywhere would survive the attack, it would be there. Danny sprinted through corridors that were filled with smoke and debris. He dodged falling ceiling panels and jumped over bodies that he tried not to look at too closely. The station was dying around him. He could feel it in the groaning of the metal and the failing of the lights. He made it to the repair bay just as another explosion rocked the station. The blast threw him off his feet and sent him tumbling across the deck. He hit a support pillar hard enough to see stars. When his vision cleared, he found himself trapped under a fallen beam. It was not heavy enough to crush him, but it had him pinned. He could not move. The repair bay was on fire. Danny could feel the heat on his face and smell the acrid smoke filling his lungs. Through the smoke, he could see the viewports. The collective ships were circling closer. They were finishing the job. In a few minutes, there would be nothing left of 7B but debris and ashes. Danny thought about Lily. He thought about the video message he had sent her just yesterday. He had told her that he loved her and that he was proud of her and that he would see her soon. Now he would never see her again. He would die here in this burning repair bay at the edge of nowhere, and his little girl would grow up without a father. Then he remembered the scale. His hand found the chain around his neck. The scale was warm against his palm, warmer than it had ever been before. It pulsed with light in the darkness. Danny whispered. It was barely a sound, just a breath shaped into a name. For a long moment nothing happened. The fire crept closer. The station groaned and shuddered. Danny closed his eyes and waited for the end. Then he heard it, a sound like thunder, a sound like the roar of a god. Danny opened his eyes just as ship tore through the wall of the repair bay. It was not alone. Behind it came 17 more ships. vessels covered in those same obsidian scales. They poured through the breach like dragons from legend, like angels of destruction sent to save him from the darkness. The collective ships tried to react, but they were too slow. They fell upon them with a fury that Danny could feel in his bones. Fire and plasma and weapons he could not name tore through the machine ships like they were made of paper. The battle outside the viewports was brief and brutal. Within minutes, the collective fleet was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. Danny lay pinned under the beam watching the aftermath of the battle. His vision was going gray at the edges. He had breathed too much smoke, and he was pretty sure something inside him was broken. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was still alive. A shadow fell over him. Danny looked up and saw standing in the breach where her ship had torn through the wall. She was larger than he remembered, more magnificent. Her scales gleamed in the firelight and her wings spread wide behind her like a cloak of darkness. She had new scars, fresh burns crossing her hide like badges of honor, but her eyes were the same, amber and warm and filled with something that looked almost like fear. She crossed the repair bay in 3 massive strides. She lifted the beam off Danny like it weighed nothing. Then she knelt beside him and gathered him up in her arms with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a creature her size. "You called," she said. Her voice was thick with something Danny could not identify. "You came," he replied. "I told you I would. No matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, I gave you my word." Danny laughed. It hurt to laugh, but he could not help it. The absurdity of the situation was too much. He was lying in the arms of a 12-foot dragon warrior surrounded by the ruins of his home and the wreckage of an alien fleet. He should have been dead. By all rights he should have been dead. But here he was, alive because a promise made in a repair bay had meant something to someone from the other side of the galaxy. "How did you get here so fast?" he asked. His expression shifted. If Danny did not know better, he would have said she looked embarrassed. "I was already on my way. I have been thinking about you since I left, worrying about you. When I felt the scale activate, I was only 3 systems away. I pushed my engines harder than they were designed to go. You were coming to visit. I was coming to see you. I told myself it was just to check on the repairs, to make sure my ship was still functioning properly. But that was not true. I wanted to see you, Danny Cole. I wanted to hear your voice and watch you work and listen to you talk about your daughter." Danny did not know what to say, so he just reached up and put his hand on her face. Her scales were warm under his palm, warmer than they should have been. She leaned into his touch like it was the most natural thing in the universe. "I am glad you came," he said. "So am I." The station collapsed around them, but Danny barely noticed. He was safe. He was alive. And somehow, against all odds, he had found something in the darkness between the stars that he had not even known he was looking for. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human mechanic had been saved from a collective attack by warriors. Not just any, but the third claw of the Obsidian fleet and her personal escort. 17 ships had crossed 3-star systems at maximum speed to rescue one small human from a dying repair station. The story was impossible. It was unprecedented. It was true. Danny spent 2 weeks recovering in the medical bay of his flagship. His injuries were more serious than he had realized. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding that would have killed him if the medics had not treated him immediately. They used techniques that human doctors had never seen, healing agents that repaired tissue at a cellular level, machines that could knit bone back together in hours instead of months. When Danny finally walked out of the medical bay, he felt better than he had in years. Was waiting for him outside. She had not left his side during his recovery except when her duties demanded it. Even then, she had delegated as much as possible. Her crew had noticed. Danny had noticed. The entire fleet had noticed. The third claw of the Obsidian fleet had a human. Nobody quite knew what to make of it. "The High Council wants to meet you," said. She was standing at attention, but her tail was swishing in that nervous way it did when she was worried. The High Council, the ruling body of the Ascendancy. They have heard what happened. They want to speak with the human who earned the life debt of a warrior. Danny felt his stomach drop. He was a mechanic from Nebraska. He fixed engines and changed oil filters and argued about spare parts. He was not the kind of person who spoke to ruling councils of alien empires. What do they want to know? His expression softened. They want to understand. No human has ever done what you did. No human has ever been offered a scale. The fact that you called upon it and that I answered has raised questions that they do not know how to answer. Questions about our relationship with your species. Questions about the nature of honor and debt and connection. What do you think they will decide? I do not know, but I will be with you, whatever happens. Danny nodded. He trusted her. It was strange how easily that trust had come. A few months ago he had never met a, now one was the closest friend he had ever had. The journey to the Ascendancy took 3 days. Danny spent most of that time with learning about her culture and her people. She told him about the High Council and its members, ancient dragons who had lived for thousands of years and seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. She told him about the rituals and protocols he would need to follow. She told him about the consequences of failure. If they decide you are unworthy, she said quietly, they may demand your life. A debt unpaid is a stain on the honor of the one who owes it. They may decide that the only way to erase that stain is to remove you from existence. And if they decide I am worthy, smiled, that rare beautiful smile that transformed her terrifying features into something almost gentle, then they will accept you. You will become a friend of the Ascendancy, an ally, perhaps even a citizen. It has never happened before, but there is no law that says it cannot. The High Council chamber was the largest room Danny had ever seen. It was carved from the heart of a mountain on the ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, and massive pillars lined the walls like the bones of some ancient beast. The floor was polished obsidian that reflected the firelight from torches that burned with flames that never went out. 12 dragons sat on thrones arranged in a semicircle at the far end of the chamber. They were enormous. Each of them was larger than. Their scales came in every color imaginable, and their eyes glowed with the wisdom of ages. These were the rulers of 17 star systems, the lords of an empire that had existed since before humanity discovered fire. They looked at Danny like scientists examining an interesting specimen. Walked beside him as they approached the thrones. Her presence gave him strength. He was not alone in this. Whatever happened, they would face it together. The dragon in the center of the semicircle spoke first. His scales were gold, and his voice was like an earthquake. You are the human called Danny Cole, the one who saved the life of our third claw. I am. Tell us why. Tell us what moved you to help a creature that your kind fears and hates. Danny thought about the question. He thought about all the ways he could answer it. He could talk about honor or duty or some grand philosophical principle, but that would be a lie. The truth was much simpler. She was hurt, Danny said. She needed help. I had the ability to help her, that is all. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members exchanged glances that Danny could not interpret. The golden dragon leaned forward on his throne. You expect us to believe that you risked your life for a stranger simply because she needed help, with no expectation of reward, no ulterior motive. Yes. That is not how the galaxy works, human. Every species we have encountered acts from self-interest. They help others only when it benefits them. They show kindness only when they expect kindness in return. You are asking us to believe that humans are different. Danny shrugged. I cannot speak for all humans. I can only speak for myself. I helped because it was the right thing to do. I would do it again. I would do it for anyone who needed help. That is how my father raised me. That is who I am. More silence. Then something unexpected happened. The dragon on the far left began to laugh. It was a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. One by one, the other council members joined in until the entire chamber shook with their laughter. Danny looked at in confusion. She was staring at the council with an expression of shock. "They are pleased," she whispered. "I have never seen them laugh like this. You have impressed them." The golden dragon raised a hand, and the laughter subsided. "Danny Cole, you are a strange creature. Your species is young and fragile and insignificant in the grand scope of galactic history. But you have shown us something today that we had forgotten existed: pure selfless kindness. An act of compassion without expectation of return. This is rare. This is valuable. This is worthy of recognition." He stood from his throne and spread his wings. They were magnificent. Golden light seemed to radiate from them and fill the entire chamber. "In the name of the High Council of the Ascendancy, I hereby declare you friend to the... Your debt to us is nothing. Our debt to you is everything. From this day forward, you will have the protection of our empire. You will have access to our worlds. You will be treated as one of our own." Danny felt his knees go weak. He had come here expecting to fight for his life. Instead, he had been welcomed, accepted, embraced. "Furthermore," the golden dragon continued, "we wish to establish formal relations with your species. The humans have shown through you that they are capable of honor, capable of friendship. We would like to learn more. We would like to build an alliance." Danny thought about what that meant. Humanity gaining the friendship of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, trade agreements, military alliances, cultural exchanges, all because one mechanic from Nebraska had helped a wounded dragon. "I would like that," Danny said. "I think we have a lot to learn from each other." The council nodded in approval, stood at Danny's side with her head held high and pride burning in her amber eyes. She reached down and took his hand in hers. Her claws were gentle. Her grip was warm. "You did it," she said quietly. "You changed everything." Danny smiled up at her. "We did it together." 6 months later, Danny stood on a stage in front of cameras that broadcast his image to every human world in the galaxy. He was being formally recognized as humanity's first ambassador to the Ascendancy. Behind him stood a delegation of dignitaries. In the audience sat representatives from every major human government. And in the front row, connected by video link from Mars, was Lily. She was wearing her best dress, and she was smiling so wide that it looked like her face might break. The reporters asked Danny how he had done it. How had he bridged a gap that diplomats had been trying to cross for decades? Danny thought about the question. He thought about that night on 7B when a dying dragon had crashed into his repair bay. He thought about the 48 hours he had spent fighting to save her life. He thought about the conversations they had shared and the bond they had formed and the scale that still hung around his neck. "I just fixed her ship," he said. "That is all." But it was not all. It was never just about the ship. It was about seeing someone in pain and choosing to help instead of choosing to run. It was about the radical, simple act of kindness. It was about the truth that Danny's father had taught him all those years ago on that farm in Nebraska. The measure of a person is how they treat creatures that cannot fight back. Danny had lived by that truth his whole life, and in the end it had changed everything. After the ceremony found him standing alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple that reminded Danny of Nebraska sunsets. "What are you thinking about?" asked. "Home, my daughter, the future. The future is bright now, because of you." Danny shook his head. "Because of us. I never could have done this without you." Moved to stand beside him. Her shadow fell over him like a shield, like a promise, like a vow. "Where you go, I go," she said. "That is how it works now." Danny smiled. He reached up and touched the scale around his neck. It was warm as always, warm like the heart of the dragon who had given it to him. "Then let us go see what the future holds, together." They stood there on that balcony watching the sun set on the first day of a new era. A human and a dragon, friends, partners, family in every way that mattered. The galaxy would never be the same, and it had all started with a busted engine and a mechanic who did not know how to walk away.